I'm Anna Linton, and let me tell you, Thanksgiving dinners can sometimes come with the kind of drama that should be reserved for reality TV. Picture this. My sister Chloe suddenly declares that my husband, Lucas, is madly in love with her in the dining room. I swear, the moment she said those words, the air froze like even the mashed potatoes were taking a breath before jumping ship. Lucas and I exchanged looks that screamed, "Is this really happening?" Chloe leaned back, smug as she could be, like she was about to drop a bombshell on the universe. When she asked, "You all see it, right?" I could practically hear the crickets in the background. My mom dropped her fork in slow motion while my dad blinked like he'd just seen a UFO. Lucas, with his brows knitted fiercely, shot back, "Chloe, what the hell are you talking about?" I knew we were caught in the epicenter of some family lunacy, and I was not about to go down without a fight. Things escalated when Chloe, with that unsettling smirk of hers, turned her attention to me. I felt this fiery heat build up in my chest. Say one more word about my husband, and I guarantee this dinner will end with more drama than you bargained for. Of course, she chose that moment to giggle like an evil sidekick trying to lure me into her crazy scheme. Her response, "Anna, you're so clever to ignore how much he tries for me," was like a scene from a bad soap opera. Lucas leaned in, his voice now sharp enough to slice the tension in that room. "I'm only trying because you're my wife's sister, not for any other reason." Chloe tilted her head in this unnerving way, saying, "Men don't show up that fast for women they don't feel something for." If looks could kill, my mother's were practically daggers, while I felt the urge to throw my mashed potatoes at her. I snapped back, "Helping you jump your car isn't love, it's basic human decency." But Chloe was on a roll, eye roll included. "Jealousy, that's all you're feeling," she shot back, and I could hear my dad's throat clearing like he was trying to stand guard over the craziness. She had this relentless drive to expose some truth, completely ignoring everyone's collective side eye. "I'm telling it like it is, no matter what the rest of you pretend not to see." I leaned over the table, my heart racing. "No, Chloe, you're seeing your own twisted fantasy." Her smile flickered, but you could tell she wasn't planning on letting go of that delusion anytime soon. Then Lucas reached for my hand, and Chloe's jealousy set off alarm bells. "He's only doing that because you're here," she hissed, like a cat ready to spring. My mother whispered my name as if it could magically dissolve the tension brewing. But the truth was already out in the open. By the next morning, I awoke to Chloe's social media post, poetic nonsense about the undeniable energy between two souls. I knew exactly who she meant but refused to feed her delusions. Lucas strolled by and asked if anything was up. I didn't hesitate. "Your sister's at it again with her Instagram delusions." I passed him my phone, and his face turned pale when he read her latest dramatic prose. "This is insane, Anna. She's trying to make it look like I'm cheating." My heart sank a little more. He realized how far she'd gone with this twisted narrative, and I knew we were in for a lot of family drama if this kept up. Chloe's Instagram game was off the charts, and she just posted a pic of the ceiling fan Lucas helped her install 2 weeks ago. The caption read, "Some people show up for you in ways others never will." I couldn't help but roll my eyes and turned my phone to Lucas, declaring, "She's spinning quite the tale." Lucas rubbed his forehead, looking bewildered. I thought I was being a good friend, but apparently, Chloe had other plans for this narrative. When I called Chloe, she answered with over-the-top cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. "Take the post down," I insisted, feeling my anger simmer. Instead of taking me seriously, she laughed like she heard the world's best punchline. "You're taking everything too personally." I was ready to explode, pointing out, "It's personal when you imply my husband is your secret support system." Chloe dismissed my concerns with a sigh, proving just how tone-deaf she truly was. Her arrogance had me gritting my teeth. How dare she? I sat down next to Lucas that night, firmly ordering him to cut ties with Chloe. He looked conflicted, caught between loyalty and the impending storm brewing. "I don't want to start drama," he protested, but I shot back, "Drama already started. You just haven't been paying attention." After a long exhale, he reluctantly agreed to stop aiding her delusions. I just hoped it wouldn't spiral out of control. The very next morning, the test arrived uninvited. Chloe called Lucas, her sugary tone dripping with neediness, asking him to fix her Wi-Fi. "I'm busy," Lucas replied, and you could practically hear Chloe's jaw drop from here. She was not one to let go easily. "You're never too busy for me," she exclaimed, but he shot her down with a steely "I am now," hanging up before she could launch into her usual dramatics. I could almost hear the chaos unfolding within Chloe's mind. Moments later, my phone buzzed with Chloe's call. "What did you do to him?" she hissed. "Nothing. He just stopped feeding your fantasy," I retorted. Of course, that didn't sit well with her. "You're scared he cares about me," she snapped. I fired back, "I'm not scared. I'm disgusted." I was shocked, but not nearly as shocked as when her next post went live within the hour. Funny how people reveal their true colors when they're threatened by a connection they can't control. Lucas looked at me, a mix of disbelief and horror on his face. Fast forward to the family dinner, the atmosphere was so thick you could slice it with a knife. Lucas held my hand, silently bracing himself for impact as we walked in. Mom wore that shaky smile that screamed uncertainty while Dad barely managed a grunt. Just when we tried to settle in for a pleasant meal, Chloe decided to upend everything with a casual, "It's getting ridiculous how cold Lucas is toward me." The tension skyrocketed. Lucas froze mid-breadbasket reach, his shoulders tensing like a coiled spring. "This is ridiculous, considering he's simply ignoring your fantasies," I shot back, eyeing Chloe like she was a pesky mosquito. She leaned in, grinning like she was prepping for the final round. "He used to help me without hesitation, but since you started controlling him, Lucas could no longer hold back. Stop acting like my kindness was anything more than basic decency." Chloe, the queen of delusions, smirked. "Decency doesn't look like the way you looked at me." My family shared a horrified glance, and I couldn't resist. "If you think basic errands mean romantic interest, that's just your delusion talking." Chloe's sharp retort sliced through the tension in the air like a hot knife through butter. She accused us all of being terrified of the revelation, Lucas's true self finally surfacing. Lucas, shaking his head in disbelief, muttered that this was unreal, a notion my father, ever the peacemaker, was about to challenge. But before he could restore order, Chloe declared, with a dramatic flourish, that the chemistry between her and Lucas was as clear as day. My mother's stammering attempt to downplay this claimed chemistry was met with Chloe's sharp laughter. "Come on, everyone's pretending because you can't handle the truth." I leaned back in my chair, bemusedly observing the train wreck, quipping, "We're not pretending, we're just watching the glorious meltdown." Chloe shot a furious look, accusing me of being the real liar, claiming I was stifling Lucas's feelings. Hilariously, Lucas slammed his palm on the table, rebuffing her claims with a firm, "There are no feelings, Chloe. None." The awkward silence was suddenly broken when my cousin chimed in, revealing that Chloe had earlier proclaimed Lucas would ditch Anna sooner or later. As the table collectively gasped, Chloe inhaled shakily, clutching her defenses. Then, she took a precarious stand, throwing my name into the mix, claiming I was only asking questions because I wasn't blind. Oh, the irony. I fired back, reminding her that she wasn't blind, she was just wrapped up in delusion. My mother attempted to intervene softly, murmuring my name, but Chloe wasn't backing down. She insisted Lucas always showed up for her while he only pretended for me. With a stare of pure disbelief, Lucas declared, "I show up for my wife every day of my life." This only egged Chloe on, her laughter dripping with bitterness as she claimed he was simply being watched, desperate to convince everyone of her narrative. I leaned forward, aiming for clarity, insisting that Lucas's affirmation was rooted in reality. The air crackled with tension as my father exhaled sharply, voicing his disapproval. "Chloe, you've crossed a line here." This only fueled Chloe's delusions further as she looked around desperately, seeking validation. "You're all scared to admit something real is happening," she protested. Auntie softly shot back, "Honey, The only real thing here is your imagination." The atmosphere shifted dramatically as Chloe shot to her feet, declaring her unwavering honesty. Lucas rose too, coming back with the searing truth that her perspective was a fantasy designed to indulge her ego. Despite her trembling lips and forced smile, she clung to the narrative that truth didn't require our validation. I stood up defiantly, locking my gaze with hers, revealing with a fierce confidence that she had twisted my husband's kindness into a nonsensical love story. Just when she looked ready to retort, I interrupted, declaring this wasn't jealousy but rather her dragging our family into a web of her delusion. My mother quietly cried, and my father clenched his jaw, visibly holding back his fury. Chloe's face reflected a mixture of rage and humiliation as she ominously warned, "One of you will regret denying this." Lucas's calm response was equally chilling. He had one regret: his failure to notice her spiraling sooner. At that moment, clarity washed over. This wasn't rivalry or jealousy. We were in the deep, murky waters of a delusion. 2 days after our family dinner exploded, I woke up to a barrage of notifications, my revelation twisting my stomach into knots as I braced myself for the storm that was about to descend. I had no idea what awaited me, but the anticipation hung heavy in the air, an unwelcome omen of the brewing chaos that was about to unfold. Chloe unleashed a full-blown monologue on social media, painting herself as a victim of oppressive forces who can't handle emotional honesty. Not so subtly, she aimed her tirade at both Lucas and me, as if our very existence was an affront to her authenticity. I couldn't help but read her words multiple times, noting how expertly she twisted the narrative. Just typical Chloe drama, right? But this one hit a little differently. Lucas clocked the intense expression on my face and nudged me for details. I shoved my phone in his direction, and his face morphed from curiosity to a tight-lipped glare. "She's making me a secret lover and you a sinister gatekeeper." I felt my blood pressure creeping up. "It's a strategy," I muttered. "She needs validation for her fictitious victimhood." Meanwhile, the comments surged like an unexpected tidal wave, with friends echoing sentiments about protecting peace and shining too bright. Feeling the pressure of anger bubbling in my chest, I fought to keep my cool. I refused to react emotionally. After all, that was exactly what Chloe wanted. Drawing on my training, I crafted a measured response to lay out the facts of our situation. Lucas peeked over my shoulder, noting my restraint. "You're nicer than she warrants," he remarked. "This isn't kindness, love, it's tactical clarity," I shot back as I clicked post. The response was immediate. Old high school acquaintances chimed in, pointing out they had been wary of Chloe's obsessive posts about Lucas for months. Amid the chaos, Chloe flitted into the comments like a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, declaring I was rewriting history. I retorted that nobody feared ghosts that didn't exist, but Chloe didn't take the hint. Before I could formulate another reply, Lucas exploded into the conversation, declaring, "I have never had romantic feelings for you, Chloe. Your claims are false, uncomfortable, and inappropriate." Tags were dropped like bombshells for all to see. The comment section ignited, with others pleading for her to back off. One observation caught my eye: "He's telling you he's not interested. Respect it." But Chloe didn't take a hint. Instead, she leaned into her delusion, claiming men always deny feelings in front of their wives. Lucas turned ashen with frustration, unable to believe her degree of manipulation. "She's flipping my discomfort into evidence," he spat, while I could only shake my head. My relatives joined the fray, emphasizing how Chloe was crossing lines, painting her exclusion of boundaries and decency. Yet, like a moth to a flame, she doubled down, framing herself as the only brave person around. When my dad, rarely outspoken online, finally chimed in with an uncharacteristic "Chloe, this is unacceptable." "Stop," I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she would listen. Of course, she turned a blind eye, crafting another post labeled "Toxic Families" that were out to silence the truth-tellers. It was no longer mere petty drama, it was a full-on social media battleground. As chaos brewed, My parents summoned the family for an emergency meeting that weekend, and you could bet things were about to get even more interesting. As I entered their living room, the atmosphere crackled with tension, like a wire about to snap. Luca was right next to me, his jaw clenched tight, radiating that elusive energy of a storm about to break. Meanwhile, my mother was in full anxiety mode, wringing her hands as if expecting Chloe to waltz through the door at any moment. My father loomed by the fireplace, his shoulders rigid, silently bracing for chaos. Isabella was busy flipping through the screenshots I had sent her, already deep in thought. With an air of seriousness, Isabella looked up and declared, "This isn't just jealousy or sibling rivalry." My father, puzzled, pressed her for clarity, and without missing a beat, she explained, "This has all the markers of delusional erotomania." My mother turned pale, whispering, "Are you saying she's mentally ill?" Isabella nodded earnestly, continuing, "She's mistaking kindness for romantic love and spinning her own tale." It clicked for Luca too. He exhaled heavily, realizing how this distorted perception morphed every little gesture into proof of her fantasies. I chimed in, "And her denial just deepens the delusion." My father, clearly searching for answers, turned to me. "Has she told you more than what we've seen online?" I handed him a meticulously compiled timeline of every incident with dates and witnesses. As he scanned it, his face shifted through disbelief and anger. "This has been happening for months," he finally exclaimed. It was chilling to note that my aunt had even raised it last week, asking if Lucas was unhappy, while my uncle hinted at Chloe's peculiar way of lighting up when Lucas was around. "This isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern," I insisted. Isabella nodded thoughtfully, warning us that the situation was only escalating due to Chloe facing rejection. "Rejection threatens her delusion," she pointed out. Luca, feeling the weight of this revelation, looked around and asked, "So, do we just stand by and let her spiral?" My dad's gaze was resolute as he shook his head. "No, we establish strict boundaries. Hard ones." My mother objected softly, "But she's still my daughter." My father countered gently but firmly that intervention was crucial before Chloe hurt herself or someone else. I took a deep breath. This was vital. "She can't attend family events until she seeks real therapy," I said firmly. Isabella added her 2 cents about needing an apology from Chloe to Anna and Lucas. My father, unwavering, decided he would be the one to deliver the message. When the call connected, Chloe's chirpy tone was unsettling. But when my father laid down the boundary, it was like flipping a switch. Her demeanor morphed into furious outrage. "You're on Anna's side because you're scared of the truth," she screamed, flinging accusations like confetti. The chaos escalated, my mother pleading for peace, but Chloe was beyond hearing. She hung up mid-sentence, leaving a heavy silence in the room, like a dark cloud hovering over us. I exchanged a look with Luca, a shared acknowledgement that the line was drawn, but this was just the beginning of a long battle against the delusions taking root in Chloe's mind. Within weeks, Chloe's life unraveled in spectacular fashion. My mother called me, tearful and frantic, reporting that Chloe got written up at work for her emotional outbursts. While I was hardly shocked, she had been spiraling publicly for ages. Luca remarked quietly, "She's losing her grip because the fantasy isn't holding up anymore." Our fears were confirmed. When Chloe was confronted about her erratic behavior, she lashed out, insisting that jealousy was behind it all. For her, honesty meant ripping the Band-Aid off her chaotic life. But her father didn't see it that way. He warned her that what she called honesty was just her unraveling. Soon after, Chloe stopped paying rent completely, prompting her to crash at her aunt's place with designer bags in hand. Claiming she needed a temporary shelter due to her so-called punishment for speaking her truth, she agreed to stay one night on the condition she'd seek therapy. Spoiler alert, that arrangement barely lasted till sunrise before she stormed out. As her downward spiral continued, Chloe's lies morphed from petty fibs into wild delusions. Friends began texting me screenshots of her outrageous claims. Chloe insisted that Lucas was back in her life, apologizing and missing her. That was rich. Lucas hadn't contacted her at all. When I confronted her with the truth, her response was a harsh scream over the phone, claiming we were abandoning her during her crucial relationship. It was infuriating. I wasn't just going to let her live in this fantasy. She shot back, warning me I'd regret my words when he eventually left her. Things escalated to an alarming point one night while Lucas and I were blissfully binging our favorite series. Suddenly, we heard a noise outside, like a squirrel on a caffeine high. I feared the worst. Chloe was back. Lucas stood protectively in front of me as he turned on the porch light, revealing Chloe, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. When I opened the door just enough to block her entry, she insisted Lucas had summoned her. He calmly denied it, ordering her to go home. What a tangled web we wove that night. The tension mounted when she vehemently refused to accept defeat, deeming Lucas confused because I was present. My voice transformed into a sharp command, "Leave before we call the police." Chloe reacted as if I were a ghost haunting her and murmured that I was obstructing her happiness. Then she faded back into the night, leaving behind an eerie chill. The police noted her trespassing, but the scariest realization struck us: Chloe's delusions had morphed from sad to downright scary. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my father checked on her days later and stumbled upon a scene that still haunts my nightmares. Chloe sat in pitch darkness, rocking back and forth like a marionette drained of its strings, repeating Lucas's name with desperation. Her state was alarming. She didn't recognize her own father when he reached out, and when he called me with trembling words about her safety, my heart sank into the pit of my stomach. Rushed to her side, we found Chloe off in her own world, pointing at nothing, claiming Lucas was there. It was heartbreaking. My father called for a psychiatric evaluation as Chloe fought against help, like a trapped animal. Lucas stood there, tears in his eyes, whispering that this wasn't the real Chloe, it was her illness. In that moment, all I could do was cling to him, both of us too shattered to look away. When the paramedics finally took her, it echoed as a sinister full stop to a chapter that felt interminable. At the hospital, the news was grim. The psychiatrist confirmed she was in the grip of a severe delusional episode and could be a harm to herself. My mother broke down, unable to hold back her tears while my father sighed deeply, voicing his apologies that weren't meant for anyone but himself. Chloe's last words to me were chilling, as she accused me of keeping her from Lucas. It felt like one final slice of denial cutting deep into my heart. I reassured her that I was saving her from vanishing into herself entirely. As the doors closed between us, relief washed over me, mingled with grief. Lucas wrapped me in his arms, an anchor in the chaos, reminding me that love must protect reality even when reality is painful. For the first time in ages, I inhaled deeply, trying to find my own clarity amid the storm. Chloe's journey wasn't over, but at least now, I could begin to breathe again, knowing we took a step toward helping her find her way back.